I'm Faith Colas, Director of Advocacy, Outreach, and Community Affairs. On behalf of Dr. Eve Hall, our CEO and President of the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, welcome to Conversation Wellness, a series that will inform you and keep you connected to the ongoing work of the Greater Milwaukee Urban League and the work of our community partners. The Conversation Wellness series is a part of our focus to address health inequities. Our mission is to empower communities and change lives. Before I begin our introductions, let me remind you to mute your microphones unless you have a question or comment during the presentation. Also, feel free to comment or submit a question in the chat box during the presentation. We will be recording today's series, so if you have to leave us for any reason and want to share today's session with others, we'll be posting it on our website, tmul.org, on social media, and on our YouTube page. Today's Conversation Wellness is focused on addressing the world of COVID-19 and the world of vaccinations. Joining us are presenters Katie Lepak, who is the project officer for the Milwaukee County Public Health Collaborative, where she supports collective COVID response and recovery efforts among health systems, community health centers, local health departments, pharmacies, and community-based organizations. Katie holds a Master of Science degree from UW-Milwaukee and discovered her passion for public health while conducting water quality research in Romania and through an internship with the World Health Organization. Prior to her current role, she worked in research for the Wisconsin Department of Health Services in UW-Milwaukee and served as public health officer in Milwaukee County for 6 years. Emani Taylor is the co-founder of INPOWER, a full-service marketing and community outreach firm specializing in health, education, and social care. In 2018, Emani and her partners launched the company on the belief that the human will has the power to be a greater determinant of your life's outcome than anything else. Together, they work tirelessly to leverage strategy, storytelling, advertising, engagement, technology, and grassroots outreach to inspire the power of hope, dignity, and self-agency. Emani Taylor and her team supported the Public Health Collaborative through continued community education via a website called Healthy MKE. Over the last 2 years, Healthy MKE has been a local resource that has supported various community initiatives and navigated support to assessing COVID-19 vaccines, health insurance, and connections to care. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you once again to Katie and Emani. And ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Faith. We are so pleased to join you today on behalf of the Public Health Collaborative. Couldn't ask for a better partner with to be joined by today, Emani and her other colleagues at INPOWER. So thank you all for taking the time out of your day to share this bit of time with us. We hope that you have lots of questions for us and that we can make this a really meaningful space for all of us while we are gathered here together. Our intention is to share with you some conversation around COVID-19, which is one of the communicable disease viruses that we have all become quite familiar with over the last 3 years. And then hope to share some messages related to some respiratory viruses, appreciating we are all sharing this winter season and the fresh snow with one another. So talking about some of the key respiratory viruses and how we can keep one another safe. Wanted to share some information and some messages around childhood immunizations, appreciating that you are likely connected to children or have folks in your circles that are connected to children. Want to share some information about monkeypox and shingles. We'll talk through some adult vaccination recommendations and give you lots of great resources where you can learn more. Then I'm super excited for Emani to share some of the awesome work that we've been working on with a number of partners to share really lots of different important messages related to flu, COVID, and other just general information. So if it's okay with everybody, that's how we intend to share this time with you today. So maybe we can go to the next slide and we'll start talking about a virus that we've all been talking about for quite some time now, which is COVID. So this is an image here, and we will share the slide deck with all of you following the presentation. And this is a link in a space. If you're interested to learn more, please do. We are so excited and thankful for our colleagues over at Milwaukee County and the Office of Emergency Management, who during the time of COVID stood up this really complex data dashboard. And it is sort of a source of truth for all things COVID. Lets us know kind of what are we looking at for cases, how about hospitalizations, how many people who are testing and those tests are being reported, how many of those individuals are positive. Right now, we are learning that the newest variant that is tending to take over and be the dominant variant right now is a specific Omicron variant called XBB.1.5. So this is still a version of Omicron, but is what is largely circulating in our community. COVID remains ever present across our nation and in our community, but we are pleased to say that at this moment in time, we're having about a medium level spread of COVID. Our hospitals are responding well to folks who are needing and seeking care. But just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of this resource and then continue to lift up for you all to think about as we're starting to see changes in COVID. We know XBB is particularly transmissible and is likely to be circulating in our community given that it's the dominant strain. Really want to encourage folks to continue to think about vaccination. On the next slide, we pulled some pieces from the DHS data dashboard. Again, feel free to visit this. When we look at Milwaukee County, we probably all recall that COVID vaccine has been quite a journey for us. Initially, when vaccine was available, individuals were asked to complete a primary series, which was 2 doses of vaccine. So this image on the left side of the screen is showing that we as people who are living in Milwaukee County, 61.9% of us have completed that vaccination series. However, through our vaccination journey and this COVID response together, we've then gotten boosters. Depending on your health condition, you may have needed a second booster. And now there is the newest bivalent Omicron booster available. What you're seeing in the second diagram here is a number of individuals residing in Milwaukee County who did receive that updated bivalent booster. So at this point in time, 16.5% of us have received this updated booster. You can see in some of the graphic breakdowns, many of our community members who are age 65 plus have sought out an opportunity to be vaccinated with this bivalent booster. However, we want to continue to encourage everybody to go and seek their bivalent booster. This bivalent booster is now available to anybody 6 months of age and older. And just wanted to call out, there's some important happenings in the COVID space as we are meeting today. The FDA VRBPAC, Vaccine-Related Biological Products Committee, is meeting as we speak today. And one of the things that they are talking about is the COVID vaccination series. And they are considering, you may have heard in the news, changing sort of how the COVID vaccination is being operated and moving it to be more familiar to what we all experience with flu vaccine. So moving to an annual vaccine. So that meeting is happening right now behind the scenes with our federal partners. There's public links to it. I'm sure our media feeds tonight will have lots of update about what's happening. So just want to continue to name that what we know about COVID and how we're responding to it continues to evolve. So we want to really thank you for continuing on this COVID journey with all of us. We know lots of people continue to have questions. And so we really want to make sure that the community knows where they can take those questions. So Healthy MKE, your healthcare provider, talk to trusted folks in your circles. Feel free to reach out to Emani or I or others. We want to make sure that people know that there are folks who are willing to hear your questions and really make sure we can give you the sources so that you can make informed choices about what's best for you, for your family, and those that you love most. So now maybe we can transition over to some other viruses that are circulating in this winter. You may have heard about flu, or you may have heard about another virus called RSV. So this slide is showing right now in this top corner of Wisconsin, you can see the red is denoting high levels. We have quite a bit of moderate in the yellow, and then the blue area is below baseline. So happy to report in Wisconsin that it looks like for this week at least, our peak might be kind of on this downward trend. And then you can look across the country and see sort of where these different levels are. The graph with all of the wiggly lines is showing us a variety of different respiratory viruses. And again, sort of happy to note that kind of at the end of this, we're seeing lots of sort of things that are on the downward trend. What we know about influenza A is that it was kind of circulating a lot in the community. And we're happy to report that we're seeing continued decline across the state. Unfortunately, this year, we're really sad to report that there were 3 influenza-associated pediatric deaths between October 1st of 2020, which is when we start flu season, to date. So just want to encourage you, if you have not yet had an opportunity to seek out a flu vaccine, please know that it is not too late. Flu vaccines are still available at healthcare providers, whether that's your doctor office, potentially a retail pharmacy, health centers, and others. So if you are in need of a flu vaccine, please proactively go and seek one out. We want to keep you and those that you love healthy. As we look at flu, given a lot of interesting changes that we've all experienced together as a result of our last 3 years of COVID, what's really interesting for all of us is sort of what we saw is this initial peak. So if you look at this 22-23 solid red line, we saw a very quick and early peak. When you look at other years historically, typically our flu season does not peak quite this early, right? It's later on. So the flu season, we typically start to think about it starting in October, and then it will increase November, December, January, February, March, and then we start to see it trail down April, May, and then comes spring and the much warmer weather. So the seasonality of some of these viruses, and the more that folks are starting to re-engage with one another and circulating in our community, we're seeing some different behaviors out of these viruses and their transmission. So again, just really want to encourage folks, if you have not yet gotten your flu vaccine, please, please, please think about that. If you have questions, please talk to different folks and help figure out what the right decision is for you. When we look across the state for flu vaccination, 36% of Wisconsinites have already completed their flu vaccination. So we know that there's still an opportunity for many of us to step forward. Specifically in Milwaukee County, we have 33.1% of our residents who have received a flu vaccine. Now, flu vaccine looks different depending upon your age. Some of our younger children will need a 2-dose series. However, later in life, many of us just need that one single dose to keep us healthy and strong. So again, encourage you and others to think about seeking out a flu vaccine. After we talk about flu, it's kind of a natural transition to talk about the children in our lives. Hopefully you have some inspiring young children in your lives. I know I've definitely have some in mine, and thank you for all that you do to shape those children's lives. Coming out of COVID for lots of different reasons, we are seeing a really marked decline in the number of children who are up to date on their vaccinations. So there's an article here, and we pulled out this figure, and unfortunately it shows the largest declines in kindergarten vaccination rates for a specific vaccine, often called MMR, which is the vaccine that's responsible for measles, mumps, and rubella. You can see in that kind of pink or purplish area at the top what the national estimate was. And unfortunately, you'll see Wisconsin is listed as second. So we had the second largest decline in kindergarten immunizations. We know that COVID vaccine and this rapid development of this new effective tool and technology has brought the vaccination conversation into many people's lives and homes and community circles. And we appreciate that people have questions, and rightfully so. But again, really just want folks to think about where are the safe places to have these conversations? Where can we get information so that people have the opportunity to make informed choices to protect particularly children and the rest of us from some of these key communicable diseases? On the next slide, this is data specific to Wisconsin. Many of our routine childhood immunizations are delivered from the time we are born through the age of 2 years old or 24 months. There's quite a robust immunization schedule that's recommended during that time to keep those children healthy and living full, healthy lives. So when we think about vaccines administered, each of these lines represents different time periods. So when we look back at that blue line, we kind of see how immunizations were pretty much stable from 2015 to 2019. Then in 2020, we see the rise of the pandemic. 2021, the pandemic has continued. And now you'll see in 2022, kind of this blue line that's the lowest yet, and you'll see that blue arrow is pointing to it. We've really seen continued decline in vaccinations. We know vaccinations, particularly these vaccines that are recommended early on in life, are all safe and very effective, and they have done a great job at keeping both children and our community safe and healthy. So again, this will be an area where the Public Health Collaborative, which Faith shared with you at the top of the meeting, consists of local health departments, county government agency, healthcare systems, pharmacies. Many of those partners are going to be working together really intentionally over this next year to think about immunizations and how we can make sure that the community, again, can get questions answered, can have access to really good information, knows where to go to get immunizations. So again, if you fall into needing to know more, please reach out to your healthcare clinic, reach out to Healthy MKE or others, and we want to make sure we can make a clear pathway for you. These last few years have been really interesting because we continue to hear about some additional communicable diseases that are circulating in our communities, as well as across our nation. So one of the diseases in particular that we've been hearing about is monkeypox. Emani, did we have the map slide? Just wanted to share with folks across the United States, there has, in this most recent 2022 outbreak, there's been 30,000 cases across the United States. Of those 30,000 cases, 87 cases have been reported specifically in Wisconsin. So the monkeypox virus is a virus that has been circulating. It's relatively new that it's been circulating. The first cases of monkeypox were discovered quite some time ago, and historically hadn't been circulating in the United States. There had been some outbreaks in parts of Africa, but due to travel, monkeypox then was brought into the United States, and we did start seeing it circulating here. So we're super excited to share with you all that there is a vaccine available for this, and that's what the previous slide was telling us. So monkeypox vaccine is a 2-dose vaccine. It's important to remember that monkeypox is similar to smallpox. Individuals, it's important that you get both of your doses for the best protection from monkeypox. However, we're super happy to report that even after that first single dose, you do get a good level of protection. But again, for that best dose, want to encourage people 4 weeks later to get that second dose and complete that series. What we know about monkeypox and the availability of vaccine, you can see written on the slide, there's lots of language there, talking about really who is eligible for vaccine. What we're starting to understand from the data is that we're seeing the most cases are occurring in gay, bisexual, men who have sex with men populations, or individuals who identify as transgender, non-binary, gender diverse individuals as well. So want to let people know that this vaccine is available. You may be familiar with the Milwaukee Health Department or the other 10 local health departments in Milwaukee. If you are interested in learning more about this, if you have questions about it or are looking to access vaccine, in addition to calling your personal healthcare provider, want to let you know that you can also reach out to your local health department and they will have vaccine available or assist you to getting connected with vaccine. We are happy to report that we're sort of seeing a decline in transmission in cases. So the numbers are continuing to hold steady. We aren't seeing lots of active transmission at this point in time. However, we still know that there's a lot of work to be done for lots of different reasons. Historical reasons, stigma, people being at different points in their life journey and their willingness to talk about being a part of maybe an at-risk group, for example, or sharing this information with their various sexual partners. So again, just want to let folks know that vaccine is available. And if you have questions, just want to learn more, please reach out and we're happy to share more messaging and information with you. The next topic we were going to talk about today is another virus called shingles. So chickenpox is a virus that many of us may have experienced in our lives prior to vaccine. Shingles is a similar virus to chickenpox. And what we know is about 1 in every 3 people in the United States will unfortunately develop shingles. This is a herpes zoster vaccine. Again, it's similar in its virus familiarity to chickenpox, which might be more familiar to some of you joining us today. It's hard to believe, but across our nation in the great United States, over 1 million people are impacted by shingles. And again, if you've ever had chickenpox, this virus lays dormant in your body and can be reactivated at any time. And then in your adult life, that will manifest itself as shingles. It's not really typically seen or well known, but even children can get shingles. Unfortunately, your risk of shingles will increase as you become older and more experienced in life. So we want to make sure that folks know that any adults who are age 50 and older are encouraged to get a 2-dose vaccination series of Shingrix. And this can prevent shingles and complications from this particular disease. If you are an individual who has a weakened immune system, just want to call out that there might be different recommendations for you. So it's always really important to connect with your healthcare provider and have conversations about this. Oh, yes. Thanks for sharing, Faith. Faith is sharing that her daughter had shingles as an infant because she got chickenpox while she was pregnant. So the shingles vaccine, one of the questions a lot of folks are thinking about is it safe? Is it effective? And we have lots of really rich data about this 2-dose series that will protect against shingles. In adults who are 50 to 69 years old, who are considered to have healthy immune systems, the vaccine was 97% effective. In adults who are age 70 and older, it was 91% effective. In adults age 50 and older, specifically, Shingrix was 91% effective at preventing PHN or post-therapeutic neuralgia. That's the really uncomfortable nerve pain that people often experience and describe. That nerve pain can persist after the rash that we typically see with shingles clearing. So if you're wondering sort of what is the difference between these two bold lines, one is specifically talking about sort of the virus and the rash, and the second part is talking about specifically that PHN, which is that painful nerve pain. So again, 91% effective in adults who are over the age of 70, 89% effective. You can see some other points here talking about, again, for individuals who might have a little bit of a weaker immune system. But the bottom line is that shingles risk will increase as you continue to move through your life journey. The Shingrix vaccine is a 2-dose series, and it is showing really great effectiveness. So would encourage folks to think about seeking out this vaccine as a way to keep themselves and others safe and healthy. On the next slide, just wanted to remind folks, we often think about immunizations for children in our lives, but wanted to just share some recommendations even for the adults who are joining us today. We spent a great deal of time talking about COVID vaccine. Want to continue to encourage you and others to stay up to date on COVID vaccine, appreciating that the FDA is meeting in real time today. We might have changes about what that means. So we'll continue to watch that and share messages about that. But if you have not yet gotten your bivalent vaccine, would encourage you to do that. And if you have questions or there's barriers to doing so, please reach out and we'll be happy to get you connected to overcome some of those. Additional adult vaccinations that are really important, we've touched on here earlier, was your annual flu vaccine. So that's really important. Another one that you might be familiar with, and sometimes we think about, is our tetanus, diphtheria, or our Tdap vaccine. I see a question in the chat, so I just want to circle back because we were talking about shingles. Shingles is a 2-dose series vaccine, so you get those 2 doses. And then once you have those 2 doses, for most individuals, that will be the only 2 vaccinations you will need. The data shows that the effectiveness typically lasts for 7 years. So think about that, and you can always have more conversation with your healthcare provider, but 2 doses and good, strong, robust protection for 7 years. So these are some other key routine vaccines that we want to make sure our adults in particular are thinking about so that they can live their best lives and stay healthy. COVID vaccination, your annual flu vaccine, and making sure that you're staying up to date on your Tdap booster, which is recommended every 10 years. So hard to sometimes remember when you last had that one, but want to encourage folks to stay up to date on that. On the next slide, I think we're going to talk about just a few more vaccines here for adults who are over the age of 50. You know, again, really stressing here and highlighting the risk of shingles. In addition to this, there's some language on this slide also talking about sort of pneumococcal, so the pneumonia vaccine. So this protects against serious disease and complications from pneumonia. So in particular, all adults who are over the age of 65 We want to make sure you're getting your pneumonia vaccination. The pneumonia vaccine, there's 2 different vaccinations, so it can be a little bit confusing for folks. But want to make sure that you're having conversations. Retail pharmacy is a good space to connect with to get your pneumonia vaccine. So next time you stop by your local pharmacy, feel free to have a chat there with your local pharmacy team and see if this is a vaccination series that you've completed. Also want to just put on your radar something to think about is the hepatitis B vaccine. Is that a vaccination that you have received? So that might be another one. On the next slide here, coming to a close, I promise. So much rich information. This is that vaccination schedule here. So feel free to take a closer look at this. It's not meant to be an eye test. I realize it's probably quite tiny on this screen. There is a link on the slide to the CDC where you can zoom in and get a bigger version of this. But these are all of the information here based on age for our adults who might be joining us, for the adults we have in our lives, that we can use as a conversation piece when we're talking with them or healthcare providers to say, hey, tell me more about this vaccine. Have I had it? Where am I on my schedule? So we hope that you find this to be a really helpful resource. The last slide is just going to quickly highlight some hot topics and things you might have been hearing in the news. So we have been hearing about community spread of measles. For example, we're hearing about in our neighboring state, Minnesota. This last year, there was an outbreak with 21 cases and 9 hospitalizations. There's now an outbreak that's happening this year in Kentucky that's connected to Ohio. Unfortunately, we're seeing paralytic polio circulating in the United States. Largely, those young children in our lives who are unvaccinated are at greatest risk for polio. So want to encourage people to think about that. And unfortunately, once an individual experiences paralysis as a result of polio, there's really no treatment to reverse those impacts. So again, want to encourage folks to talk to healthcare providers to really ask questions and understand the history of these vaccines, make sure that folks can think about how do I really understand if this is safe or effective, and are the folks in my life up to date and safe. We talked a lot today about the flu. Happy to report that there's a really great match being reported for what's circulating this year. And then again, we also touched on the active meeting that's happening about the FDA as it relates to changes for COVID vaccine. So a lot of technical pieces there. I'm super excited though to share this next part of the presentation presented by my colleague Emani Taylor from INPOWER, that's going to share some of the campaign and messaging work that's been really informed by the community for the community. So Emani, over to you.
Absolutely, and thank you. Appreciating everyone for allowing me to have my camera off for a portion. Forgive my technical delays. Again, thank you, Katie, for that very robust presentation. And just as an additional call out, the information and additionally to that, the sources where you can actually kind of find some more live or real-time information. All of those sources are actually linked within the PowerPoint. So we'll be sure to give you all the most updated version so that you can share and distribute amongst your audiences. And we hope that it's helpful. Ms. Faith, I want to ask if it is appropriate to start diving right into campaigns, or if we want to just take time for questions for Katie.
Why don't we dive right in? I've been asking Katie questions all along.
Okay.
So go right ahead, Emani, dive right
Perfect.
in. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back and share my screen. I'm really excited to kind of lay context. What you'll see is a quick overview of about 5 to 6 campaigns that we have worked on over the last 6 plus months. They target different audiences, but the work that Healthy MKE really focuses on is really to those that are within the Milwaukee County area, specifically within Milwaukee. There are certain zip codes like 53206, 53209 that, according to the social vulnerability index, are areas where individuals experience more disparities with their health. And so a lot of the work that Healthy MKE puts out in resources that are shared are typically shared to prioritize information sharing to those groups that are experiencing disparities. And so you may see some representations in the way that the content is created. So I'm really excited to kind of share that. I will be obviously sharing my screen, so feel free to come off mute at any point in time if there is a live question. I will also be sending over a link where you can all actually access some of this cool content. And if you feel it is appropriate to share with your own audiences, you can do that. Unfortunately, given some of the technical delays, I will not be able to share some videos that we have due to sound issues, but be sure to check out those links because they are really cool. I'm biased, but they also are really cool videos, and we want you all to be able to share that and just enjoy the information that we were able to gather. So I'll go back and share my screen, and then we'll get started. So going into kind of an overview of our first campaign that we'll present. This happened at a time when boosters were kind of introduced into the market, and in particular, based on the, if you can recall, one of the first earlier maps that Katie shared, that first map that was like black and had all these numbers and stats. We use that data as well as county data to help inform kind of who in the area could potentially be supported by having more up-to-date information about COVID. And there was actually data showing that individuals 65 and older were not getting their second booster. So we created this campaign called Boosted and Blessed. It had a focus on individuals in faith-based areas and just kind of smaller communities, to really reiterate the fact that, you know, with a second booster and in being mindful of your health, and of course, as Katie kind of reiterated, and some of the messaging you'll find is continuously reiterated with our different campaigns, getting connected to your doctor and having those critical conversations are all ways for you to continue to be boosted and to certainly be blessed. And so we actually conducted interviews with about 4 to 5 different individuals in Milwaukee and just kind of learned their story, learned their activities, and how being boosted allowed them to either continue doing what they love to do in life. And so we interviewed a dance coach and a Silver Sneakers participant. We interviewed someone who has a very interesting history with his grandson, and you know, they kind of started getting into gardening together, and they really talked about how getting their booster, having access to a doctor to answer questions about their booster, was able to really help them make an informed decision. And so with each of the slides, you'll see some of the creative on the side. There is a link to watch the video, and I'll be sure to also drop these in the chat more. But I just want to take a moment to kind of reflect on the impact. So this was a campaign that we shared it on social media. We had billboards all over the city. We hope maybe you saw some of the bus advertisements, and in collection, we generated over 3 million impressions. And when we talk about impressions, we mean that is the number of times that, you know, any of the campaign material was seen through any particular medium or channel. And we were able to successfully report about 3,000 actions. So that may have been visits to the Healthy MKE website where we shared more information about boosters. That may have been opportunities for individuals to get directly connected to vaccine providers or to get connected to care. So we're really proud of the fact that that impact was had. And we also have TV commercials. I know I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I saw that really cool commercial you guys did. So hopefully you were able to see one of the pieces of content. And if not, you'll definitely get a link so that you can watch it, and you can also share with your family members or those who you feel would be most impacted by this information. So I want to be mindful of time, and I want to kind of breeze into the next one. The next campaign that we did was actually called Bump Up Your Immunity. And the reason why we felt this was important, and kind of thinking back to the purpose of today's conversation, which is a conversation on wellness, we don't want to be really one-sided or really pointed when we have a conversation about wellness overall. And Katie kind of identified at least 4 different communicable diseases. So we talk about shingles, RSV, flu. That's a lot to keep up with. And you know, that can also be a lot to make sure that you are protecting your body. And ways that we wanted to remind individuals, especially during a time where COVID is the leading conversation, or the leading piece in a lot of discussions around vaccines, we wanted to remind people going into the flu season that it's also a great time to make sure you're protecting your body and protecting it against all of the different possible viruses that can, you know, try to invade your body and not create a healthy space for you. So Bump Up Your Immunity is one that we really appreciate because it allows us to have a more robust conversation and think about, you know, not COVID vaccines, not flu vaccines in isolation, but how do we just stay updated with our vaccines in general? And we really positioned it to be a stressor that we get folks connected to their providers, to talk about the boosters, to also talk about flu, to also talk about any other vaccine they may need to get updated on. And that also had a really great positive turnout with over 19,000 actions and over 2 million impressions. So really excited to share that content with you all, and hoping that you all can help kind of continue to get the word out, because that's kind of an evergreen message, meaning it's an ongoing message. So excited for that to be in the market. Now, transitioning into Give Gifts, Not Germs, this was a holiday-based campaign, and we really wanted to be mindful of going into that Thanksgiving, Christmas season, that with a lot of travel and festivities happening, we want to be mindful of what we're giving. We want to give gifts. We don't want to give germs this holiday season. So it was a very fun campaign. We had a video where we have individuals kind of passing physical gifts, but then at the end, just reminding everyone, hey, make sure you stay updated on your COVID-19 booster, make sure you're protecting your loved ones, and get connected to a doctor if you have questions. And just to kind of recap, for all of the 3 campaigns that you've seen, again, we're targeting these 2 individuals of diverse backgrounds, but all within Milwaukee, and in particular, prioritizing areas where we know disparities are existing, and making sure that we're trying to get as much information and resources out to communities that are probably near and dear to each of our hearts. So really proud of this campaign, and appreciating the festive feel behind it. Now, in talking about campaigns and vaccine-related campaigns in particular, we felt that it was important to kind of go back to the basics. And when we think about vaccines, sometimes we need to remind ourselves to teach our body what to do. What do vaccines do? They protect our bodies from, you know, viruses that want to harm us in some way. And Teach Your Body What to Do was actually a campaign we created to be open to all ages, and in particular, have a focus on parents of children that are young, and infants, toddlers, but then also remind adults who are moving and grooving and working, hey, you have to teach your body what to do. In addition to self-care, you want to be sure that you are making sure you give yourself the best protection by staying protected against COVID and flu. So again, this is similar to our Bump Up Your Immunity, in that it's having one conversation at the same time, but also reiterating that, hey, have these questions and conversations in the appropriate setting, which we are always encouraging is with your primary care provider. And if you don't have one, Healthy MKE is a really great resource to help you get connected to one, and to start to do some research and a little due diligence so that you can teach your body what to do and protect yourself. So that is that one. I believe we have one more, which is our final campaign. This one is called Verified Voices. And the intention behind this was to elevate, in particular, younger community-based influencers from Milwaukee who are doing positive things in the community, but who are also parents of children that are between the ages of 6 months and 5 years old. This campaign was particularly aimed at boosters for young children when that age group became eligible. And we really wanted to just have a very direct conversation about answering questions and addressing misinformation about COVID-19 boosters for kids. So we conducted interviews with influencers, and we had a really poppy and kind of Twitter-like style creative that was put out all over the city, and we had billboards and bus wraps. And we wanted to talk to parents to understand, how do you go about addressing misinformation? What types of questions are you asking your doctor? What questions do you have about the booster? And kind of how would you encourage others to stay informed? This one took the position of not just directly telling individuals to get a vaccine or a booster, given the fact that there was a lot of hesitancy from parents about whether or not their child should receive a booster. So this campaign really focused on just encouraging parents to have the conversation, to find the facts, and to know that Healthy MKE is a trusted local resource that can be leveraged to either do that resource sharing and downloading, or to get you connected to a provider. So those are some of the amazing campaigns that we've had the opportunity to share. We are so happy to have the relationship that we do with Katie and the work that she does, because that data helps to inform kind of who should we be working with, who should we be focusing on, and the work. While you see Healthy MKE's logo on the content, the work is really a collaborative effort of, so many systems in the healthcare space, in the community advocacy space. And we just really appreciate and are so proud of the work that we've been able to put out on behalf of Healthy MKE, but it truly is a collaborative effort. So I'm excited for you all to be able to see this content in more detail. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and definitely open to any questions that you all may have. I saw there were a couple of chats coming through. So Katie, thank you for dropping all those links in the chat. If you need me to go back in and pull anything up, I will happily do so. But welcoming any questions that you all may have for either myself or for Katie.
I have a question for either one of you. Is there a feedback? Okay. Do schools still require immunizations for entrance?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There are school immunization rules that vary by age, right? So largely you think about kids who are entering kindergarten, think about kids more in those middle school years who require different vaccinations. So yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. There are requirements to enter school. And then additionally, there's sort of that 90 days of school. So if you enter school and you might not be fully up to date, you want to be working really judiciously to get into the right place to get those vaccines. But then at 90 days is sort of when kids' records are looked at by school staff to assure that folks are indeed up to date.
I was just curious because obviously the immunization rate is dropping and the disease rates are rising. So I'm just, I thought maybe they had relaxed their rules, but it's good to hear they haven't.
Yeah, so there haven't been any changes. When we think about immunizations and requirements, Wisconsin is not at the front end and is not sort of leading the way as it relates to immunization. We tend to be on the back side of that. Again, and some folks want to make sure, right, particularly for kids, that vaccines are safe, that they're effective, that we're doing things that are really going to be in the best interest. So there is concern about sort of that decrease. There are waivers available in the state of Wisconsin. So it can be for religious reason, medical reasons. For example, people can choose not to get vaccinated, or if you're caring for a child, you may make that choice. So just want to know that there are waivers available. But our message here is really what Emani was amplifying is we want to make sure that people know, where do I go if I have questions? How do I have these conversations? It's okay to have questions. Some of the stuff is really complicated. We're hearing about diseases for the first time in a really long time. Maybe our grandmas and grandpas might have heard about smallpox or different things. So we want you to have questions. We want to arm you, though, with information and knowledge and give you the confidence to move forward and know, here are some questions I might want to ask, or, where do I go if I'm ready to go ahead and get a vaccination?
Thank you, Katie, for that. Thank you, Mara, as well, for your question. Katie and Emani, I can't thank you all enough for joining us today. And I want to thank everyone that was on the call in the beginning and those that maybe had to drop off for joining us for this month's Conversation Wellness. Again, this presentation will be on our YouTube page channel as well as our website at tmul.org. Before I let you all go, remember there is an election on Tuesday, February 21st, and we encourage you to exercise your right to vote. Thank you all again for joining us and have a great day. We get to give you a few moments back to your day. Take care.